I'm Roger and welcome back to the Tractor Tech channel. This is going to be part 3, the final assembly of the Farmertec Husqvarna 372. The little horseshoe goes on the fulcrum. Start out with this rubber buffer. Goes in this hole. So now with the two bushings on the crankcase, we're ready to put the crankcase onto the rear handle assembly. Use these bolts to bolt the crankcase to the rear handle. Stop switch can be installed. It gets installed so that you push it to the right to shut the saw off. I have both of the wires hooked up to the stop switch. The wires get routed through this hole, then the yellow one, use a small screw there. The screw looks like this. I think we are ready to put the air filter base down in, or carburetor base, whatever you want to call this. Fuel line goes up through there. Throttle cable through there. So the intake boot can go on along with the clamp. Be sure you have the clamp on the boot. So now I have the intake boot and clamp on. I forgot on these Husqvarnas that to put the intake boot on, you have to remove the cylinder, so I kind of got a little hit of myself by going ahead and putting the sealer on the cylinder. I was able to sneak this one in without removing the cylinder, but if I were to do another one, what I would do is, instead of putting the cylinder on, I would go ahead and put the piston on with no rings, then slide the cylinder down on and put a bolt here and a bolt here, have them in a crisscross, and just loosely tighten down. And then put these two bolts in the muffler. That way everything's sealed off while you're working on it, not getting any debris down inside of the crankcase. Then when you get to this point and need to put the intake boot on, you could loosen these two bolts here, pick the cylinder up off, put the boot on, put your rings on, then slide the cylinder back down. Use 4 bolts like this to bolt the carb floor in. 1, 2, 3, 4. The carburetor can go on now. Throttle cable can now be hooked up. The pulse line can be hooked up. The choke can be hooked up. The grommet for the carburetor can now go on. Need to remove the flywheel to put this on. run the plug wire down through between the flywheel and the crankcase, and this cover can go on. Now the recoil assembly can go on using these 4 bolts. I already have one in here. This grommet goes in the cylinder. The brake handle can go on. The bolt can go in the brake handle now. The bushing can go in the brake handle. And the final bolt can be installed in the recoil cover. This AV spring can be installed on the side of the cylinder. It was in a kit, it was in a bag with the bolt spring in this plastic piece. The wrap handle can go on now. Should be a bag with 4 self-threading screws left. I had a 5th self-threading screw for the handle to the AV spring. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 there. Top cover can go on. There are 3 bolts like this that hold the top cover on. The bucking spike can go on. My camera accidentally got switched to picture mode, so I missed this, but I put the nut in there. It was not supplied in my kit. Then I put the stud on. The air cleaner can go on. If you want this set up when you order your saw, look for a 372 HD air filter set up, and you'll get the intake, that filter, and this top cover instead of this little filter and that top cover. To put the bar and chain on this saw. Well, there it is, ready to run. Next video is going to be the first start and first cuts of this 372.